So, hello everybody. Thank you for coming to my talk about software is made out of people. Our job would be so much easier if there were no users. I've heard that sentence so often. Either if there are hard to reproduce bugs which customers report, or if we build this cool new feature and all we get is negative feedback. The hard truth is, most of the time, we're not building software for software's sake. We're working on it to help other people solve problems. We're working on IDEs so others can create software. We're adding smart capabilities to window blinds so we can close them manually automatically. We're even trying to improve people's health by working on fitness apps. All of that includes software, and all of that is used by people. There's no way getting around that. Which means that it has to work for those users. And the difficult question is, who are the users and what do they need to work? There are many ways to find out more about the users. We can add all kinds of tracking to the applications we're developing. We can send out surveys asking the users. We can invite some of them to a usability lab and observe them actually using the software we've built. But what if the software isn't available yet? What if tracking isn't legal or not possible? What if we don't have a way to contact the users? And more importantly, what if we want to get the first version of a new feature as good as possible without showing it to the users? There's a tool, and that's called personas, and they can help in this case. Personas originate from user experience design. Alan Cooper introduced them in his book, The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, in 1998, so they're not really new. What he did is, he play-acted fictitious characters in order to help solve design questions. These personas that he set up should be based on research and can be described in a narrative form. We'll see more about that later. Now, even if we don't always acknowledge it, the user base of our software is not uniform. Take, for example, the Eclipse Ide for Java developers. I guess most of us are familiar with it. Not every user of it is a 30-something-year-old male that studied computer science and has been programming since he was 15. However, this is a valid persona of many. Then again, the description that I just gave, this one-liner, it still feels unpersonal, nothing I could really relate to. And if we have this one-liner written down in a requirements document somewhere, it probably won't affect the development of new features for the Eclipse Ide. So we could set up a persona. Tom Mitchells is a 35-year-old senior software developer at an international bank. He's the lead developer for their portfolio management website for customers. He has a master's degree in computer science and keeps up with current technology by working on side projects in his free time. He makes 75,000 euros per year, which can be topped up to 80,000 if he reaches his goals. He collects watches and hits the gym at least 3 times a week, and he's single. This has a different feel to it, right? For me, this is like having a friend describe someone to you before you meet him at a bar. With this kind of information, you could discuss which kind of drinks he likes. He's probably not the Virgin Colada kind of guy, right? Or you could have a discussion about the way Tom is going to use a feature of the Eclipse Ide without him being there. He's keeping up with new technology, so he's not averse to change. On the other hand, since he's collecting watches, he's very detail-oriented. So if something isn't aligned properly, or if an error message is phrased in a jolty way, he's annoyed to no end. Now what I did for the sake of this talk, I just picked the code completion feature from the Eclipse Ide. I guess we all know it. I'm using this as an example for all the personas that are coming. So Tom is using the code completion feature, but he expects it to help him and not get into his way if he doesn't need it. Sometimes it enables him to work faster, because he has to type less, but in other cases he just wants to get the menu away right now, so it won't disturb him. So if we were to implement code completion for the first time, something like the type ahead or close by escape key, for example, could result from having him as a persona there. Another example, Roberto Canabero is a 25-year-old software developer. He just started his first job at a small web agency customizing online shops. He taught himself how to code by reading tutorials and Stack Overflow questions. He makes $39,000 a year. In his free time, he's refining his skateboard skills with his friends and publishes skateboarding videos on YouTube. He dreams of becoming a director or professional skateboarder. There's a big difference between Tom and Roberto, because Roberto, he doesn't like if things change. Things changing means these nice screenshots from Stack Overflow, they don't match anymore. It means that he has to relearn things. If we think back about the code completion feature, Roberto will use it all over the place. He's new to coding, and he doesn't remember all methods from all classes by heart like all of us do, right? The code recommenders feature, which you've probably all seen, which says, hey, you open code completion, and this is the method you're probably going to need. That's something that could have been developed for him. It really helps him, and is a few Stack Overflow searches less for him on how to do things. Now, even though Roberto is an inexperienced developer, he's still a regular persona, a happy path in tester terms. There's another category of personas, and it's called the crisis persona. I first heard about this in a book called Design for Real Life, which I can really recommend. It's an ebook, pretty cheap, download it, read it, it's brilliant. Not all users are in a normal state when they're using the programs we're developing. Some of them are in a full-blown crisis, and this affects how they use the software we're building. Take Angelique, for example. Angelique Boublier is a 29-year-old software developer. She's got a computer science diploma through evening classes and is nearing the end of her probationary period. The feature she's working on is 2 weeks behind schedule already and still not finished. Her €31,000 income supports her parents as well. Taking care of her parents takes up most of her free time, otherwise she's out hiking. So in an attempt to compensate being behind schedule, she's been working 16-hour days for a week. And minor issues like typos are happening more often all the time, which adds to the problem. She fears that not getting the feature done means she won't pass the probation period, which means that she won't be able to support her parents anymore. This is a crisis. Not only is code completion helping her to avoid mistakes, it's also helping her to save time. This is a bit of a stretched example, but depending on the software you're working on, there might be very different crisis personas. A nice example that I like a lot is for social networks. There's a crisis persona that just discovered that she's being stalked and needs to lock her account down right now so the stalker can't gather any more information about her. Ever try to do that on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever? It's not that hard, not easy always. For banks, there's the well-known crisis persona of the guy that just lost his wallet, needs to block all the cards right now, but also needs to get new ones really fast, probably because he's on vacation. Another crisis persona for the Eclipse Ide could be the build breaker. Someone just before an important milestone build is supposed to happen, somebody committed a change, and it's just breaking all the code. How well does the Eclipse Ide support him to fix that situation? This should be working. Cool. Third kind of persona, which is also quite often overlooked, but no less important and fun to play with, is the abuser. Tom Wang is a 45-year-old security expert. He loves to cause trouble and wants to see the world burn. An easy way to achieve this is to abuse software. If he can abuse it in a way that earns him money, even better. He has no problems with overstepping boundaries and breaking the law. His income obviously depends on the success of his mischief, but ranges in the upper 10,000 euros, so he's good at what he does. Finding abuse cases for the code completion feature is hard. Then again, that's not the point. The point of having this persona is thinking about abuse cases, trying to come up with them. And if you do, working on mitigations. The one thing that I came up with, I didn't check it, but maybe it would be possible to create a code recommender, promise all kinds of nice things, put it in the Eclipse marketplace, and mine Bitcoin in the background while it's running. So I made up those personas just for the sake of this talk, and I'm going to stop with them right now. Now, if you want to use personas professionally, pulling them out of thin air is not the way to go. I said this before. They should be based on research. Now, if you're extending an existing product, there already is a user base that you can base your personas on. Try to identify common traits of your users, segment them, and use those traits to build personas. Traits may be things like age, cultural background, education, use cases in the software you're building, and stuff like that. Look for common traits, build the personas, and then use those personas for further development. If you're building a new product, that's not going to work. So brainstorm personas. Ideally with a really diverse team. Because the more diverse the team is that's brainstorming the personas, the more edge cases you will come up with, the more problem cases, abuse cases, crisis personas you will come up with, which then can guide your development and which will enlarge your user base ideally, because the software just works for more kinds of people. Then, once you've developed whatever you're doing, check it again with the users. Do those personas match? Did you go in a completely wrong way? Adapt them. No matter how you create those personas, once you have them, make sure everyone developing that software knows them by heart. Ideally, the whole team is able to discuss if a new feature is helpful for Tom or if Angelique needs a few changes without you having to pull out the sheet and, who's Angelique again? What's her problem? Have them like external or virtual team members. Now, there are different ways to do that. If you're sitting in an office, post them on the walls everywhere. Keep bringing them up in discussions over and over again until people actually know more about them. Now, some of you may wonder, how do I convince my team to actually use personas? This is a personal tip, but I've seen it work pretty well. So one way to convince people to use personas is to take an existing feature and have it tested by a professional UX lab. If you can't afford that, test it with a real user in a controlled setting in your own company. Decide on a few easy tasks the user should perform and see what happens. The important part of this is to have developers, managers, designers, whoever, sitting in a different room where they can observe the screen and the user, but have a soundproof wall between them. You can use Skype or something like that to just share the screen, throw it on the wall with a projector, you're done. In my experience, seeing how the user misses this obvious, well-designed, good articulated, brightly colored button that he's supposed to click for minutes, or observing him taking all kinds of completely crazy paths through the software to achieve a goal, that is a huge learning experience. I've seen my teammates in almost physical pain during those sessions. And I learned the hard way why those soundproof walls are important. Because forget screaming at the TV during soccer matches. Developers screaming at users on the wall, that's the real deal. Now, this is the people we're building software for. You can use personas to make sure we build the software properly for the right people. In the description of the talk, I also mentioned the people building the software. Now, this is the part of the talk which comes with a warning. Your mileage may vary. This is stuff that either worked for me or worked for people that I know and trust. Doesn't necessarily have to work for you. Now, as this is the last talk of the day, you're probably all a bit tired. So quick show of hands. Who identifies as a developer? Oh, shit. Who identifies as a tester? Who hates raising hands? Thank you. Okay, I identify as a tester, by the way. Okay, I'm a tester, I said that. Which means that it's part of my job description to annoy people. Either I'm asking lots of questions or I'm bringing bad news, for example, about bugs. That can't be helped, but the form and timing can make a big difference on how I'm perceived by my teammates. Because there's this magical state of being almost every developer strives for, being in the zone. I think you all know that term. It's that state where thoughts manifest as code without effort, algorithms appear out of thin air, and the outside world doesn't exist. You only stop coding because your stomach's growling so badly because you've missed 2 meals without noticing. Getting into the zone takes time. So every interruption is a problem. So when I, as a tester, notice a bug, or I have a question, I ask myself, do I have to interrupt somebody right now, or can I put it on a list on my notepad and just ask about that later? And I can leave my developers, my teammates, a bit longer in the zone and interrupt them later, ideally shortly before or after lunch break when they interrupted anyway. Most of the time, that stuff isn't so important. I can just collect a few topics, wait for a proper moment, and then interrupt them. If you're thinking, okay, this is the really most basic thing, yes, it is, but it's easy to forget it, especially if you find this really cool, tricky, or really freaky bug, and you just want to show it to the world. Stop yourself, or I stop myself and collect all that stuff. Now, I work at a company. I have my developers sitting in the same room and in the room over. So I have the luxury of talking to them face to face. And that's actually my preferred way of doing it. Because before I annoy them with bugs or questions, I just enter the room, carefully look at the face, and if they're sitting like that, either I come back later, or do a bit of small talk, crack a few jokes, try to lighten the mood before you darken it again. Before you tell them, hey, there's a critical bug in your code. I have remote teammates as well. Preferred way of communication. I just ping them via instant messenger. Hey, may I interrupt you? It's a lot easier to ignore that blinking IM window in the taskbar than having a phone call coming in, because a phone call always implies is, oh my God, it's urgent. I have to pick it up. I can't ignore it. Once they tell me, yes, I may interrupt them, I rip them out of the zone, then we call. Audio connection beats text connection. Now, instead of talking, I could also just write bug reports. Right? I'm a tester, I write bug reports, throw them over the wall, and that's it. Fix it. I don't care. Sometimes, when talking beforehand, we discover the problem's already known. I'm testing an old version, the problem is already fixed. Or because we're talking, turns out the problem's more complex than we thought. We find additional information. All of that stuff, of course, goes into the bug report, makes it easier to fix that thing later. Sometimes we discover, okay, that's a really quick fix, that's a one-liner. Don't write a bug report, I'll just commit it anyway. Now, bug reports as an entity are a topic on its own. Because whenever I write a bug report, I try to ignore the nice default template put in place by my company. They mean well, but I prefer to put myself in the position of the person responsible to fix the bug at one point in time. What would I be really interested in? What would really help me getting that thing fixed? Often it's the little things which can make a big difference in how a bug report is perceived. Can I understand what the bug is about without reading all the text? It's the most important information presented first. Is there a foolproof instruction how to reproduce a bug? Can't reproduce annoys me to no end, and probably the person trying to fix it as well, because they spent time trying to reproduce it. And I wasted it because my description wasn't good enough. Is test data accessible in an Is test data available in an accessible place? Even if that bug is fixed months later, are all the environmental parameters documented? This could go on and on. It depends on the context what's really being needed. It may become annoying to keep all that in mind if you're filing lots of bugs in a row, especially if you've collected them on your nice list, talk to the developer about them, go back to your desk and, okay, now I've got to file 20 bugs. The first one's really nice. Second one gets a bit sloppier. Then again, it's even more annoying and embarrassing if a bug can't be reproduced anymore in the future because, for example, the test data was stored on a network drive which IT wipes every 2 weeks. Happened to me more often than I care to count. I've caught myself writing very sloppy bug reports because the issue itself was just so stupid. How could anybody do that? Then, if that happens, I try to catch myself and remember the prime directive for retrospectives by Norm Kurth, which you may have heard of. Oh, I'm having technical issues here. That's not cool. Regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. Because, to be honest, so far, no one has ever implemented a bug just to piss me off. It might happen sometime. I'm sure. Right? As of now, I'm sure. Now, the situation at hand not only applies to the situation in the workplace. This applies to the whole situation my teammates are in. I'm not saying that this is the way you should greet your coworkers every morning, followed by a 1-hour chat at the coffee machine about the latest developments in their life. Definitely not. On the other hand, living the cliché of the socially inept software worker that prefers to sit in isolation in darkness isn't helpful either. The people working alongside you are more than their name and job description. They're people. Care for them, get to know them properly, and give them a chance to get to know you. It will improve the way you work together, and as a side effect, it will improve your work as a tester. Example 1. My UI developer, Michael, for example, he has a sick child at home, and he's been sleeping about 3 hours a night. It might be a good idea to take a closer look at his commits than usual. My database expert, Mary, recently left her boyfriend after being in a long relationship with him. She's unfocused, she's distracted, understandably. It might be a good idea to pair with her to give her a bit more focus. And now there's the part where probably all of the developers in the room will start hating me. Because this doesn't only apply to testing and looking for problems, this also applies to fixing problems. Sometimes I notice an issue that annoys me so much, but the product manager decides, yeah, that can wait. It's not important right now, file it, forget about it. And then again, I know that one of my developers has a real deep love for chocolate. And I just happen to have this chocolate bar in my desk. Might get the issue fixed a whole lot sooner. As I learned from Alex over there, this is called BDD, Biscuit-Driven Development. A tester friend from technical issues all over the place. A tester friend from the UK told me that she got into a bit of trouble with her HR department due to a similar tactic. And this can serve as a warning story. Because some of her developers respond to chocolate, some respond to free beer after work. One of her developers responds very well to her wearing knee-high boots and short skirts. That might be taking things a bit far. I'm a man, probably won't work for me anyway. But what I do know is that I lost my mouse. There we go. One of my developers is really into puzzles, crypto challenges, stuff like that. He's the one to talk to if I find a bug that's really hard to reproduce. Just phrase it as a challenge, he'll bite. Another developer, he's really pissed off. Do I get to say that, by the way? One of my developers is really annoyed by performance issues. So whenever I find something that's sketchy in this area, I just try to get that over to him, because the fix will be there an hour later. Of course, I don't overuse it. I'm not the evil mastermind pulling my developers on strings, but it has its uses and it helps. Once again, more or less common sense, all too often neglected and ignored. And especially with remote workers. A friend of mine shared the story of one of her developers from India being amazed that she remembered his name and a personal detail that he had shared a week ago. He actually exclaimed on the phone, "You're treating us like human beings." Why wouldn't she? How are the other people in the company treating those guys? Be proactive. Be the one to open up. Share something of your life whenever it's appropriate. What I found out to work pretty well is something as silly as ending emails not with "Greetings, Tobias," but "Greetings from rainy Ludwigsburg, Tobias." Next answer, "Greetings from sunny Regensburg." That goes back and forth, and after just a few emails, business content above the signature, personal stories below the signature. Get connected, even if it's just emails flying back and forth. Because even if you don't ever see them face to face, there are people at the other end of the bug report. And never ever resources. I hate that term with a passion. We're not oil, we're not coal, we're humans. And we should treat each other like that. Now, chocolate and cookie jars. Chocolate and cookies are not just a great way to bribe people. A cookie jar on a desk is also a great conversation starter, and an even better way to get a feeling of the mental state of the team. What I've observed is, after the initial sensation of the cookie jar has waned, it tends to attract two types of people: the bored ones and the angry ones. Now, the bored ones want to get a cookie and ideally a chat to get rid of the boredom, of course. As a tester, this is a great opportunity to learn more about them or get them to show and explain things. A cookie for a 5-minute explanation of that new mocking framework we're using that I hadn't had time to look into? To me, that sounds like a fair deal. And then again, if I know that the person next to the cookie jar has a big backlog of features that he should be working on, but still he tends to be bored, he seems to be bored, I wonder what's going on there. Either he's just winging it, writing the sloppiest code imaginable, or he's pushing it all to the end and then winging it. So it might be a good idea to look closer at the stuff he's working on. Now, the angry ones are also brilliant, because this again is a great opportunity for testers. Listen to them complain. It helps. But also listen for what they're complaining about. Do they complain about the horrible code they have to work with? Bing! How did that code end up there? Do they complain about the people they have to work with? Probably not your area, but also interesting to know. Is the workload too high? Or, and that's what I prefer, are they stuck? It happens quite often in my company. People come over, grab a cookie and says, "I'm stuck. I've got a problem. I'm stuck. I can't find the solution." I listen to them and I ask them what the problem is. And I guess we've all had this moment where you explain the problem to somebody else, and before you even finished explaining the problem, you're like, "Got it. Thanks. Off you go, you fix it, you're solved." I try to be that person that gets people unstuck. First of all, it's good that they are unstuck. They can keep working. But also, they're getting back to their desk, being pretty happy, and ideally with a little memory in their mind, "Oh, Tobias helped me today." Not like I feel that I did that much, but okay. This feeling will work in my favor next time I approach them with it. "Dude, there's the really nasty bug in your code." To sum it all up, like it or not, software development is all about people. It's about users that do the craziest things, but only because they're humans with needs and emotions. And it's about co-workers, teammates that are not resources, but people with strengths and weaknesses. If we embrace this and act accordingly, the software we're building, and ultimately all of us, will benefit. Thank you very much for your attention. If you liked the talk, rate it. If you hated the talk, rate it even more. Tell me what you hated, why you hated it, otherwise I can't get better, and you will have to listen to me giving shitty talks in the future again. Thank you very much. Questions? Everybody's just waiting for the beer.
Maybe one question about the instant messaging stuff. So how do you manage to ignore that? Because I personally prefer getting emails. Will not do whatsoever. I can disable that. So we have Time for Business. Basically, there's no difference between a call popping up or instant messaging. And I have some colleagues who live very far away, and they start, Andy, come on, write the question and then straight away. So, because then I'm interrupted anyway, so how do you deal with that?
So we've got the rule that either ignore it, but yeah, the blinking stuff right there can be annoying, or just close Skype. In our company, that's a valid option. If you want to work on something, focus on something, close Skype, which is also why I don't want to call. Calling is just, it's loud. We have actual physical phones on our desks still. Old, I know, but we do. That interrupts you anyway. Skype, silent. Yes, it's blinking, but if it's blinking on the primary monitor, you're working on the secondary, it's a bit less annoying. But yeah, email is a good other way. But then again, sending an email, hey, can I call you? Yeah, it feels like more of an overhead. I found for our context, IM to work the best. Right? Thank you.